inherited parental patterns. Basically, how does our ancestors affect us, and how do we break the chains? How do we actually get rid of those effects, and how can we break the chains actually both up and down the ancestral line? Because whatever influences they are and things that we're affected by is also going to be going down the line to our kids as well, to the third and fourth generation. So that means that we're affected by 3 to 4 generations above us. So how does all their crap affect us? And it's also cumulative. And up and down that whole chain of influence, there's a lot to unpack in many ways. So I thought this would be a very good subject for the evening. So let's start unpacking that lot. The obvious thing is then genetics and epigenetics. So in our family tree, okay, what genes are prominent, what was turned on. So obviously genetic is inherited genes, and epigenetic genes is the ones that we can change. We switch on and off according to environment, nature, nurture, all that kind of stuff. So the one level will be nature. So the inherited genes will be our nature coming down the ancestral line. But there's also the genes that we switch on and off by the environment, the family unit, the culture, all that kind of stuff, our development, everything like that. So it's both genetic and epigenetic. So what was switched on in them up the line, and how can we change that or switch things off or switch other ones on again? So that's one of the branches that we can look at. But there's a whole bunch of them. So maybe I'll just run through them. I don't know if I'm going to remember all the ones I listed, but it's something like, okay, so genetics, energy, karmic, soul bonds, soul contracts. If you go on to the esoteric side, there's the subconscious programming that we have during pregnancy and first 7 years of life. Basically, we're wide open, we're getting programmed. The energetic states of our parents, both at conception and during pregnancy, and the emotional states. And then also the release of endorphins, hormonal, all the neurochemicals, all that kind of stuff, hormones, everything that's released during the birth process and before. But then there's also the societal and familial combination of influences there as well. So that will be belief systems, what kind of belief systems is around the whole concept. There's things like, if you go into the African and Chinese and some South American traditions, there's a lot of ancestral worship or acknowledgement. So what's happening with the ancestors. Then there's complex trauma, big T trauma, all of that can happen in that relationship. Then there's the 7 Essene mirrors. So what are they reflecting back to you? What is the reflection that you see, but also the projection that we cast on that? And yeah, that's just some of the stuff that came out that I think is worth touching on. So I don't know, is there anything specific maybe in that little list? Don't worry if you missed half of that. We'll go back and cover each one, hopefully.
I'm really interested in the in utero story and what happens like how a mother and father's thoughts can imprint on the actual physicality of a child. I'm just dealing with two clients at the moment that have both been severely impacted, in my opinion, by their parental influences at the time of their embryonic development. And they're now needing to undo it in order to move forward. So I'd love, if you've got anything on that, I'd love to hear about it. Thanks, Harry.
Okay, so right from conception, because it's like at the moment of conception, there's the combination of the two energies. Because in the act of making love or procreation, you're not only connecting on one level, it's not just the physical level. So you're connecting on with your emotional body, mental body, energy body. And a lot of us also carry a trauma body around with us that's actually a combination of all of those things. So right from the get-go, it gets very complicated. Because whatever happens in our system, in all the bodies, also gets transferred to the physical body. So obviously the egg and the sperm, it's all sperm is part of as a cell. So it picks up all of that energy and flow and vibration as part of the body. The whole body vibrates in resonance. In every cell, even if it's a single cell, all of that whole, if you think of it as a fractal, so the whole body and all the experiences is present in that single cell, as a drop of water from the ocean holds the whole ocean kind of idea. That's on a very subtle level. On just a physical level is like what happened at that moment of conception, what kind of lovemaking was being engaged in. Was it conscious? Was there any anxiety with that? Was there any resistance? And did both parties give consent in many ways? So that's on a soul level as well, and subconscious level. So there's a lot of problems with pregnancy and all those things nowadays. And what's it, IVF, or what do they call it? A lot of that is actually not working anymore. The ovums are getting rejected and all that kind of stuff. So that can be on many levels. It can be a subconscious belief system of not being worthy, of not clearing up your own backyard, so to speak. Because there's a lot of influences nowadays as well, like about the difficulty of having children, the financial situation, all of those things. So there can be very practical, subconscious blocks to actually the pregnancy taking place. But there can also be then more spiritual or esoteric soul level connections or blocks. For instance, if your pre-program or your preview of your life, so I fully believe we come in with a plan, a master plan, and we're here for a reason. And it's not 100% clearly defined, but there's definitely some lessons or experiences that we decide that we're here for. And one of them might be that we don't want children. And then it doesn't really matter what we do and how much interventions we try or whatever, then it might not happen from that level. And it also depends on soul contracts there and your soul bonds. Because maybe the partner is actually not the one that should be the father. So if you're female, you're trying to get present, maybe your husband's not the right dude. Maybe it's somebody else. So that also happens, that because of the strain in the relationship and all that, the partner goes and has an affair, and next moment they're pregnant after battling for years to get pregnant. So yeah, it's not always as clear cut as we think it should be. In general, there's a whole, like, the sperm count in males is reduced, I think, by 50 or 80% or something stupid. So there's a huge reduction in active sperm for males nowadays, and that obviously will have an effect as well. So there's that. That's the influence, the microplastics, the hormones, all the other stuff that we're being fed in our modern lifestyle, our diets, everything like that. So it can be a dietary influence, it can be a spiritual or soul level influence, it can be a subconscious influence that there's resistance and blocks. But then there's also the whole ancestral lineage thing. Because when we go down that road, maybe your relationships with your parents or one of your parents or both of them is not brilliant and what they should be. And there could be a lot of scarring in the background for around that as well, around your parents. And that could cause a feeling of resistance or not wanting to bring somebody into this world, or not thinking it's right to put somebody else through that in case they go through the same thing. So it gets very complicated very quickly. So that's just on the conceptual part. Then you've got 9 months, and that's then obviously it becomes very much the mother's gig. So what state is she in? Because if they're connected, fetus and mom's obviously connected, everything is shared. So if there's any brain chemicals, endorphins released, cortisol, adrenaline, all of those kind of things, obviously that will affect the pregnancy as well, and the fetus, and obviously the person. Okay, so during pregnancy, what's the mental state? What's the emotional state? What's the energetic state? What's mom going through? And all of those things will be influenced up and down the line. So what was grandma going through? What was great-grandma going through? So if there's like a lot of stress, like in times of war, whatever, maybe they went through the Second World War, and that influenced grandma, and they went through a whole lot of things as well, and that influenced you, and you went through a whole lot of things. So that will influence, all will be going down the line into the fetus as well. So endorphins, adrenaline, cortisol, oxytocin, serotonin, all those kind of things, direct influence, and those are powerful drugs. We got one of the most powerful drug factories in our head or in our bodies. We can trip out quite seriously on just our own drug factory. And if you imagine that in a developing fetus, that's like getting quite a rush. So there's a lot of drugs floating in there. But yeah, then pregnancy is a kind of stressful, for some very stressful, for others like very happy state. But also comes back to our modern society and how we live and how we actually prepare for pregnancy and birth. So modern thing is like mom works still like whatever, like 2-3 weeks before she has to pop, and then, or even like she's working to the last day or two. And then once again, when birth happens, it's completely into bright lights, noise, boom, boom, and you get smacked on the ass and like, so that's not a pleasant experience to come into this life. And there's no, or very little support system unless there's grandma and a tight family or aunts and everybody supporting mom as well. So all of that will have a great influence on that, or on the pregnancy and on the mom. But then also on that whole generation down the line. So your children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, all will suffer because of the way that conception and pregnancy or gestation was what happened in that period.
I'm also curious about the thought patterns of the holding zone during development. Like in the person that I saw today, the father had a physically challenged sibling. So he was terribly anxious that there was going to be something wrong with one of his children. And he passed that anxiety on to the mom, who worried throughout her pregnancy that there would be something wrong with her child. And in my opinion, and what I'm feeling from her, that's impacted on her physiology. She has, she spent the first 10 years of her life in a brace. So I'm really curious about that because someone else I'm seeing tomorrow also has a lot of challenges, and her mom had a steel rod inserted down her spine. So also quite an intense pregnancy. That's definitely reflecting in the daughter.
Yes, I want to just say something. And I'm going to speak from my own experience because I think it does show up in your child. I mean, when I was pregnant with my son, I'd found out that the father of my child was having an affair, and so we ended our relationship very, very early on in the pregnancy. Like, I mean, literally the day I found out I was pregnant, I found out he was cheating. So most of my pregnancy, I raised my child on my own, and obviously I cried a lot during that time. I was very emotional. I was very angry. But I cried a lot. Like, I mean, it's a breakup. You've lost someone that you were planning to spend the rest of your life with, and now you've got this child that's coming, and now you're going to do everything on your own. And I mean, my child was colic, and seriously colic, like very bad. I could not put him down. He had to be in my arms all the time. I had a pouch that he slept in. I would walk with him in my arms. If I went to bed, I would sleep with him on my chest in an upright position. It was probably the worst 6 months of having a baby. It was so bad that the doctor wanted to prescribe him meds for epilepsy. And I was like, I'm not medicating my child with such strong medication. I just knew I had to just power on through. But I do believe it was because I was in such a bad emotional state when I was pregnant with him that he cried so much when he came out that he was then expressing whatever I'd felt during those 9 months of pregnancy. But I mean, I know he knew he was loved. So, I mean, he still knows he's very much loved. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, what's also quite interesting about that, Lynn, is that maybe he learned a breathing pattern, because he would have been in you, and that would have been the breath rhythm that would have become quite familiar to him. That's really fascinating. Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you for
How is
sharing.
he now, Lynn? And how old is he?
He's 16 and a half now, turning 17 in November.
What kind of a person is he?
He's very introverted. He's a he uses a word that I think I lock in, so it means like he's a recluse. So yeah, he doesn't really he's got one or two friends that he sees, but he doesn't do well with large crowds of people, school settings, that sort of thing. He was diagnosed from a young age as having ADHD, and then obviously I never medicated him, so I fought the system for a long time. I had him at the third psychologist was like, now you have to medicate your child. So then only I medicated him, but he was diagnosed with severe depression and anxiety at the age of 8. So there's always been a bit of issues, but then again, I'm also diagnosed with ADHD. So I do think that's definitely genetic. I mean, it's been proven that it's genetic. It's passed on from one parent to the next, to the child. So yeah, but I do think that a lot of it was probably Yeah, and I asked for a child out of the box. When I was pregnant, I actually prayed. I said, God, I want a child that does not fit the mold of other children. I want a child that's out the box, and boy, did I get one. So,
Yeah.
yeah, you get what you
The-
ask for. You don't know what you're
do,
asking for,
do,
but you get it.
do you think that if you'd been really happy and the child's father were still in a really loving, secure relationship, do you think your child would have been much happier?
I think he would have been. I think I think he probably wouldn't have had the colic. He wouldn't have been as stressed out as a baby with from that. I do think it had an effect because one of the nurses asked me, "Did you cry a lot during your pregnancy?" And I was like, "Yes." And she's like, "Oh, okay. Makes a lot of sense." I mean, there were things even after I'd given birth that people had asked me, like, did you drink a lot of water? Like, because I drank a lot of iced water. So after giving birth, I was very cold. Like weird things, like stuff that you think won't affect you. And then you do it, and then it's like, oh, okay. Yeah. I think if his
Sure.
father and I just also had a better relationship. We didn't have any kind of, there was no father figure ever. So yeah, I think maybe if he'd been, I think I was sad for the loss that was expected, and for a long time I felt that sadness
Yeah.
that there was going to be no father figure in my child's life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He mistrusts men. He doesn't trust them. So he doesn't easily open up to a male or a father figure. And then I also know about all the sins of the father and trying to break generational curses. So there's a lot that I've tried breaking. Yeah,
Yeah.
like the cheating. The cheating is probably the biggest one from my family. And that's been carried through from father to father. And then I pick men that do that. So then yeah, so I've prayed over it for my own child, like that doesn't affect them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So the generational, yeah, you can call it curses, because a lot of these things are seem like curses as well. But just like coming back to your experience, and this is going to be slightly left of center, but also remember that the new guys coming in now, they're super, super open and super sensitive. They're in it fully. There's quite a bit of autism and things like that as well. And what that means is that they fully open in all 9 senses. All 5 physical senses is hyper alert, so they're getting in more information. So what's happening is that and even ADHD and things like that is also as a small spectrum of that, where actually the spectrum is slightly wider, I think. So you're getting more stimulation in, and that draws your attention to more different things. So if your hearing is more acute, you hear different frequencies, you'll record that, and your eyes, same thing. So all your actions, just on a physical level, is that those limiters and filters is slightly more open. Now with autistic children, although their filters are kind of wide open, but with the newborns as well, back the new generations coming in, they're ready for that because they're ready to make the shift and all that. So they're ready to go. So, but that means they're more open to all of these things. Then emotionally, they're also more open. On the thought spectrum or mentally, they're more open. Energetically, they're more open. Subconsciously, they're picking a lot more up. And superconsciously, they got a very strong connection to source, and their veil is smaller or thinner. So the forgetting is not as intense. The separation, your reaction, all of those things influence it as well. But there's the further influence or the more subtle influence around that as well. Because there could be, the normal pain, shame, guilt, blame for yourself around that. that's also important to have a look at those and to relieve that, because that will also go up and down the line. So all this work that we're doing, like the shadow work, everything, yeah, it can look very narcissistic and self, all about me, and all that. But it's very important that we do a lot of this work and to sort out those belief systems lying underneath all of this. Because as soon as we can clear that up, it once again clears up the line and down the line. There is no time per se. So it's just our perception that there's something like time. So whatever we do in the moment influences past generations and future generations.
Can I just interject there? And I'm not at all dismissing what you're saying. I'm just thinking about it from the other side too. In terms of, I'm astonished at how many ADHD kids are kind of popping up all over the place. And I'm just wondering, I'm not dismissing the spiritual side of things, but our worlds have become so much busier. Like one generation ago, many mothers didn't work and things were quieter and calmer. Nowadays, most women are working before they're pregnant. And our environments are incredibly stimulating, and we are incredibly distracted, as for the most part, as human beings. And I wonder if, I'd just be curious to know how much that feeds into the changes that are happening. Are children learning those levels of distraction from us?
Yeah, and picking up on the collective as well. Because as we get busier, so the collective consciousness also advances. And that's why I'm looking at the whole AI thing and all that back to that, is because that's serious advances that we're not used to. But yeah, if you look at the whole support system, what I was saying earlier about like the support system, people taking care of you, resting, you peaceful, people are reading stuff, caring for you, all that kind of stuff. While you're pregnant, that will, number one, lessen the burden from the single parenthood or the single pregnancy, if you have that kind of support. But that's also a cultural and societal belief system. I mean, the nuclear family, mom, dad, children, that's very new and that's very disruptive. It's not a natural situation for us. If we look at primates or whatever, there's always the group and the support system of the group, the trop, was a stroopdieren.
The village, the village that raises a child. We don't do that anymore.
Yeah, so it's not there anymore, because that will already have relieved a lot of your suffering and pain and suffering during that, both during pregnancy and afterwards. In general, I'm speaking just in general, when we don't have those support systems around anymore. We also don't have the sacred spaces. Like mom's working and running around and doing business deals or whatever, trying to make money and keep the house running and everything while pregnant. And there's none of that holding space again. What I've been thinking about lately about post-labor economics or post-labor life and all that, I think that's very important again. I think those things will be what really makes society, hopefully in the next 5-10 years, we will have those support structures. A child bearer shouldn't be your child raiser. There's still a little bit of that where grandma actually brings up the kids. And that's actually because she's wiser. If you just had a look now at when you had kids, but that's 20 years ago, 16, 20 years ago, how much have you learned? So in that, picking up from the other days, the wiser and the kinder, I think we might be a little bit wiser and kinder than we were 20 years ago. And that might have helped as well.
It's such an amazing byproduct of technology. If we did get back to, if technology enabled us to go back to better roots. Never thought of that.
But this is very interesting. This is drilling down on specifics. Like, for instance, the other guy that was worried about the health side of the child, because we pick up on all of those things. We are not as separated and disconnected as we think we are. We believe that the silo of consciousness and awareness, and that nobody can penetrate, or that we don't broadcast basically everything about us. We actually open books, we broadcast all the time. And it's our perception and a belief system that we don't. This is in situations like this when it gets quite clear that we actually do. Because for a fetus, they don't know that mom and dad is worried about, like, are they going to be all right, or be crippled, or experience some form of physical difficulty or whatever. Or they don't consciously know that mom's going through this alone and that dad's actually bailed out and rejected and left me and all those kind of things. But they're very, very aware of that, and because that is in the field. So if we look at ourselves as a field where all those bodies transmit and broadcast everything about who and what we are, the fetus and the babies, they're completely open to the field. They're in that field. They're in the collective subconscious. They're in the Akashic records, whatever you want to call it. They're in that whole unified field still. They're not separated yet. They haven't developed language to separate themselves. There is no I. It's just this. And all of those influences come in. And I don't think we're aware enough of all of that. If we were totally aware of what the baby was experiencing, or the fetus, or how important it is on that moment of conception, then our whole system will change. And I think that's where we're heading. I think that clarity and that awareness will start becoming a lot more prominent, and I think that will be a big part of what our collectives, our communities, all of those things will become. Any comments, questions, notes?
Yeah, I think the place that I'm quite intrigued about in this moment is that I know that I've mentioned to you that with the woman that I'm working with endometriosis, just for the others, I happen to be working with a lot of young women with endometriosis that are really wanting to fall pregnant and struggling to. And, just thinking about AI and the conversations that we've just been having around the potential of us needing to be less busy because there's artificial intelligence to take over. I'm just linking that potential to mothers being stiller and having more time to really connect with their baby, to that piece of instruction that I've had now a number of times with these young women, that the moment of conception is so important, and that from, I have no idea if this is right or not, but what I'm experiencing in my work is that there's going to be more challenge falling pregnant for young women. And the counter to that is that I'm being told is really conscious conception. So lovemaking, when they show me what it looks like, it's almost in stillness. It's like parents consciously calling in the soul rather than sort of an ejaculation at the end of lovemaking. So the thread that I'm following is like what I'm hearing in the spaces in between is a move towards more stillness somehow from this very fragmented, very distracted place that we're living in at the moment. I don't know, it's just an arbitrary thought, but I'm curious about it.
Yeah, I mean, as back to awareness and focus and awareness again. So, and also through the 9 senses. So, and I know, like, in the middle of, like, the act, you're not that aware of what's happening with the emotional and the mental and the subconscious and all the programmings you're bringing into, like, the act, but you should be. So there's a big movement to the sacred sexuality and all those kind of things as well, which is at least shines a little bit more conscious awareness on it, but it's at the moment I feel also practiced or missing the point a little bit. Because if you want to look at sacred sexuality, that is the most sacred thing. That's union, that's bringing down, that's creation. Like, what is the moment that you should be most aware of and really grounded in your body, but also all the other bodies, is that moment of conception. But that's also part of the culture and societal influences and belief systems that it's actually not practiced to consciously conceive. So conscious conception. Now there's one for you. So if we can focus on conscious conception, which is basically what you advocate, that would be awesome. But that will once again brings us right back to all the influences, the unseen influences. So the unseen influences up and down the ancestral tree that I mentioned earlier, and also the work on reframing belief systems. So a lot of this is just reframing belief systems, because the belief system is going to govern the emotions, which is going to govern the thought pattern, which is going to govern a lot of what we take from the subconscious, which governs the energetic state. So working up and down the line from belief systems, that's why I'm actually focusing on it quite heavily. It's like, what is the belief system? How does it influence you from a personal side, but also from the external side, for archetypes, societal, cultural, collective, unconscious or subconscious, all of that kind of stuff. How are we influenced by all of those things, and what belief systems do we actually have? So before you can actually have conscious conception, you should have done a reasonable amount of work to clear those things out and clear those blocks out, which we're also too busy to do. I really want to get a job again because I want to go rest. Because if you're sitting with yourself and you're actually working on it, that's a lot of work. It's much easier to be busy and go do whatever you do. So you run around and run a shop or run a business and do this and do that. That's like rest. A lot of people see that as like being very busy and productive and all, but all they're doing is actually just chilling. And once again, back to why people were freaking out during COVID, because it was like, oh, so you thought you were busy and you were working. Hello, yes, go sit on your ass, sit by yourself, and like, hello, this is the real work. This is where it starts. And that's why I think I keep going down this rabbit hole, why this is important to me as well, so that we can have that silent time. that we can have the still moments, that we can sort out through all our crap. I mean, it's not easy, and there's a lot. I mean, we're just looking at conception and pregnancy, and like we haven't really delved into anything after that. And that's complicated enough. Okay, so what is the belief system? Why would my partner cheat on me? What belief system do I have that will bring that into my experience? That's why I mentioned like when I was listing all the stuff, that what it could be and what we can cover. That's where we bring in the 7 Essene mirrors, which I will also do like a good breakdown on sometime, because it's very important. So what is that partner reflecting back at me? Where am I in the moment? What am I judging? Because a lot of the second mirror is judgment. The first mirror is like in the moment. The third mirror is lost love or lost opportunities. The fourth mirror, I must check, I can't remember, but that fifth is to your relationship to mother and father. That's actually fifth. The sixth is dark night of the soul. Seventh is universal reflection of self, who you are as self. I can't remember the other one now. It will come. But if you look at all of those reflections, what we project onto others, be that the partner, the child, the idea of conception, gestation period, all of those will be some sort of reflection. The ancestral lines, that's all reflections and mirrors for us. So what is being reflected? And if there's a reflection, there's also a belief system. So if you look at, am I child going to be a cripple if they're born? And that fear system, there's a belief system there. There's a mirror that's reflecting something back to. There's a judgment on a crippled child is less than like a normal child, so to say. Why? What is it? Why is that fear there in any case? Is that like an ego thing talking? Is it like a money thing talking? Is it just a belief system? Like, I can't handle a child that's challenged. I must get my my PC speak right. I'm not very PC, so I can't remember all these things like physically challenged and all that stuff.
Okay,
we're all old school in this, so it's all right. So if I'm not PC, excuse me, but like I can't think of that stuff while I'm thinking about proper things. So in my belief system, you know, what is my belief system? If I'm that dad that has that fear, and I mean that's natural fear as well. We all consider that. If somebody's pregnant, if you're going to have a child, those thoughts come through for all of us. That's natural thoughts. Okay, but what is the trigger? What got stuck in there? What was that repetition mode that got entered into? And, you know, a thought comes, all kinds of thoughts come. But the more we give them attention, the more we give them energy, the more they become real, the more thoughts become things. And basically that's just the description of manifestation. So that's on the one side. On the other side, Lynn, okay, so if I'm the dad and I found out my partner's pregnant, what fears is it triggering in me? What is my coping mechanisms with triggering with those fears? So am I going to get just bail out and go, try different partners or do that form of escape? So if that is my form of escape, then that's my coping mechanism. So once again, our hurt becomes coping mechanisms, which becomes habits, which becomes belief systems. So in that process, where do we intervene? Where do we stop it? What can we see, and how can we change that up and down the line? There's a lot to ponder there, but it once again brings us back to the importance of the work that we're doing, the importance of community and systems and backups and all those kind of things. And I think for me, I'm quite excited where we're going with the whole techno AI thing, that we can actually come back and prioritize things that's important. What's going to be important is meaning. And meaning is not being busy at work and making money. That's what we define as what gives us meaning at the moment. But when those things are getting ripped away from us, all the important stuff is going to become important. Those are just entertainments, distractions, all that kind of stuff. I mean, really, if you really look at it critically, it's like we'll be doing 18-hour, 16-hour work days, and I'm not criticizing, I did that myself, working 16-hour days while not seeing my kids for like missing like a year out of it, and they were staying with me. Like, how was that a good idea? But we believe that, we have to work, we have to like do all of these things, but we just miss it. So, like the one quote from a nurse on the deathbeds with a lot of like end of life caring, is just like nobody lies on their deathbed and said, I should have actually worked more. I should have spent less time with my family or whatever. Everybody is, no, I should have worked less. I should have focused on stuff that was important. I should have like enjoyed my kids.
I read a beautiful thing the other day. I was just like still staying on that conscious conception, that one of the ways that they're choosing what eggs to implant is that they have noticed that at the moment of conception, when they are doing artificial, they notice that there's a spark of light, and that they have figured out the brighter spark has a better chance of being successful than the ones with the duller spark.
Yeah. Biophotonics, very much so. Thank you very much, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ari.
Maybe pick it up again next week, or let me know if there's anything else. I think this is a vast subject, so we can dive into it for a while. But thank you very much. I really appreciate you.